Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said he'll move quicker to trade with other countries because the U.S. is no longer a reliable partner. Join us now with more on the president's tariff agenda. Peter Navarro is President Trump's. You're not president.
Always good to see you, Joe.
You're good to see you. Senior trade and manufacturing advisor. I've got just a philosophical question, Peter, about how this works, because we all want, you know, when you say make America great again, we were a manufacturing powerhouse, and the Midwest was great. You know, I'm from Cincinnati, and you think Michigan, you think all these places, and you saw what globalization did. We'd all like to change that and turn back the clock and have great high-paying jobs for all of our citizens there. But this is going to take time, Peter. Do you think there is actually going to be a multi-year period where many of our big companies have depressed profits and depressed profit margins while the president is trying to, you know, sort of correct what happened in the past, this dislocation? Because it seems to be that he's asking companies to sort of go along with him for the greater good of all of our workers.
The answer is absolutely not, Joe. The key stat here is the low capacity utilization in the U.S. auto industry. It's down in the 60s. And what that says, Joe, is that there's just plenty of room to run. There's plenty of room to ramp up quickly the kind of production we need. Certainly there'll be greenfield investment. There'll also be brownfield investment. As you know, throughout the Midwest, there's shuttered factories that can be easily reopened. But if you ask me a philosophical question, let me cite history for what we're trying to do here so people understand. And it goes back to the arsenal democracy that won World War II. And the auto industry was a key part of that. It made the Jeeps, the tanks, the trucks. Certainly it was the soldiers that won the war, but they couldn't have done it without that might. And Joe, we've turned this country from a strong auto manufacturing nation, the greatest in the world, into simply an assembly shop for parts from the rest of the world. And a lot of the parts that come from the rest of the world are the high-wage, high-profit parts. Let me give you some stats here, just a couple of stats. We buy 16 million cars a year here. We import half of those, and the half we import has very little American content. And the rest of the half, only half of that half is American content. So only about a quarter of the American cars we buy is made in America. Now the problem, Joe, and this is the other stat I want to give you, only 19% of the engines that are in the cars Americans buy are made in America. Japan and Germany alone account for 50% of the engines and transmissions. And when you add Korea and Hungary, it's over 60%. And what that tells you is, from a national security point of view, we simply don't have an auto industry that's capable of manufacturing. We certainly can assemble. Send us those foreign parts. Now, why is that happening, Joe? It's happening because foreign countries cheat us. Foreign countries, by industrial policy, want those parts. Joe, the money that companies make and the wages that workers make are primarily in the powertrain of internal combustion engines. What's that? That's the engines, the transmissions, and the drivetrain. And if you look at where different companies buy, like Mercedes comes to South Carolina, that's great. But every single one of their engines and transmissions is from Germany or Hungary. If you go like Ford, a lot of its engines now come from Mexico. Stellantis, which, remember, that's partly Fiat, a lot of their engines come from Italy and also Mexico. So what President Trump wants to do is bring that back. And the way this is going to work is fast.
That sounds like I just want to verify. It sounds like the reason that we're going to blow up USMCA is because it's an emergency that we don't manufacture things here. Is that the logic? I get it. I understand it.
Let's not use the blow up term, Becky. But the problem we've had with USMCA was it was supposed to bring jobs home to America, and because Joe Biden did not enforce the agreement, there was a lot of cheating, and Mexico in particular has been turned into do a transshipment platform.
Okay, that's interesting.
For all
so
these
the stuff that actually
cars.
complies with USMCA is okay? That's one of the questions we have.
Yeah, we still don't know. Is that going to be all right on Liberation Day, Peter?
Well, let's look at what we just did with autos. There's certainly a very nice provision in there for autos, which is to say the tariffs don't apply to American content, only foreign content. And we're dealing with the parts issue. But I think the bigger issue here is what we're trying to achieve. And to your first question, Joe, which is really the important one, is how quickly we can do it. We can do this very quickly. I mean, when I was in the White House the first time around and the pandemic from China hit us, we were able to move very, very quickly in terms of our industrial production for all the kind of things we needed. And again, there's a lot of slack in the system. I also want to address consumers as well, because there's going to be a lot of talk about how consumers are going to be hit hard. But you got to remember a couple of things. One of the big promises on the campaign trail, which President Trump will fulfill, is a major tax benefit for Americans who buy American-made cars. And if you look at what we were giving away for the EVs, that's like $7,000 per car as much. And then if you look at the gas prices, we averaged $1 less per gallon during the first Trump administration than Biden did during his 4 years. $1. What's that? That's about $1,000 we save for consumers when we get that back down through drill, baby, drill. So there's just a lot of moving parts. And whenever you look at what President Trump's doing, you got to look at the totality of the policies. And what we're trying to do is raise wages. And by the way, I was listening to your last guest, and it's just like this notion that somehow tariffs are going to hurt productivity. It's just ridiculous and defies historical experience. What happens when President Trump does tariffs? We get trillions of dollars of new investment into this country. When you add more machines and capital to the worker base, that makes productivity fly, and that's the key to keeping down inflation and keeping real wages up. And remember, during Biden's administration, real wages plummeted. During Trump's administration, we were very proud of this. Real wages for the deplorables of this country, the middle class and the blue-collar workers, they went up. So,
right.
Big picture.
You can say that the inflation we saw that caused that was due to the Biden administration, but it had a lot to do with, wages didn't keep up with when inflation got out of hand. I guess, Peter, when you make the case like that, you're almost talking holistically that, we may either our citizens or our companies may lose something here, but we're going to get it back over here. And that just takes a leap of faith. It does sound like to use something that people were talking about earlier, we're going to have to eat our vegetables for a while with the hope of getting a nice big piece of cheesecake down the road. But you just can't flip a switch on, I don't think. And where is Ford going to get, what if they get all their seating from Canada? And it's going to cost a lot more. Was that covered in, would that be okay because of USMCA? Would they not be tariffed?
Let me push back again on the period of adjustment. I think that's the key question, right? That's the key question. We're here in a world now where the world, through unfair trade practices and industrial policies, have turned us from a manufacturing country into an assembly country. We're trying to get back to being able to manufacture autos for national security purposes and to bring with it prosperity. I go first and foremost to the fact that we have very low capacity utilization in our factories here in America. So if you can increase that by 25 or 30%, which is where we have the room to run, by definition, that won't create any inflation. It'll just create prosperity. And I think it's going to be very interesting to watch the strategies of all the different auto companies, because it's going to be like a golden age gold rush for these companies. Because the sooner one of them, all of them, get to a point where they have more American-made content, there's no tariffs, and there's more sales and more profits, and life will be good. So trust in Trump. I mean, we had the same kind of hysteria, Joe, during the first term. The same people, I see the same people saying the same things that were all turned out to be false when they were talking about the China tariffs, the steel and aluminum tariffs. I mean, heads were exploding. Cars are going to be too expensive. Aluminum cans.
But this is a much bigger deal, though, Peter. This is a much bigger deal this time. It covers a lot more countries, a lot more products. It seems like you can't just say, well, it worked the first time. It just seems like a different apples and oranges.
I can say that the same kind of dynamics broadly are still in place. They're going to take a lot of the burden. The foreign nations are going to take a lot of the burden because they have to export here. Companies are going to move as quickly as possible to do what the president wants to do. There's going to be a tremendous influx of investment. There's going to be jobs, productivity, and we got a lot of room to run. I mean, if we were at 95% capacity utilization in the auto industry, it'd be totally different. But we're not. We're in the 60s. We're in the 60s. And Germany and Japan and South Korea and Hungary, they laugh all the way to the bank at our expense.
All right, Peter, we got 30 seconds. We're doing something. I guess maybe the show's almost over. You know what that means, don't you? It's the weekend. Anyway, Peter, you have a great weekend. Good to have you on.
With you.
A true believer. True believer.
True believer with facts, Joe.
Yeah, I want some cheesecake right away. That's my problem. I don't want to eat any broccoli.
Squawk Box will be right back.